Hello, everyone. We are reading Oliver Twist, and we are on chapter 13. The mysterious visitor reappears. After Mr. Bumble and Mrs. Cornley had married, Mr. Bumble was promoted to the position of master of the workhouse. One night he went to a tavern to get a drink. There was another man sitting in the tavern. He was a tall, dark man with an ugly face, purple lips, and sharp eyes, and his hands were covered with red sores. He was Monks. "Were you looking at me when you looked in through the window?" Monks asked Mr. Bumble. "I know you," he continued. "Aren't you that parish official?" "Yes," replied Mr. Bumble, adding, "I am the master of the workhouse." "Oh, I'm lucky," Monks said. "I wanted to find you, but here by the stroke of luck I have met you." And then he added softly, "I need some information and I will pay you for it." Monks passed some coins across the table, and Mr. Bumble picked them up. Monks said, "Remember a night in the workhouse about 12 years ago when a young woman gave birth to a boy and she died? The boy was looked after by the parish." Mr. Bumble said, "I don't know which case you're talking about. There have been many childbirths like that in the workhouse." "Well, it was the pale-faced boy who was sent to the undertaker, Mr. Sowerberry, and later this boy ran away to London." Monks tried to explain. "Oh, you mean Oliver Twist," exclaimed Mr. Bumble. "Can you tell me where I can find the nurse who was present during Oliver's birth?" said Monks. Mr. Bumble replied, "Sally Thingamungy died last year." "Goodness, Elmo." Wow, my cat was loud. Monks showed his frustration at hearing this as he bit his already purple lips, which he had bitten many times. Monks stood up and he was about to leave. Mr. Bumble realized that he could make more money from Mr. Monks, and he asked him to wait. When he saw that Monks was interested and he was waiting, he said, "Another woman shared the old nurse's secrets before Sally died, and this woman can give you the information." "How can I get in touch with this woman?" Monks asked. "You can only find her through me," Mr. Bumble said. Monks gave Mr. Bumble a piece of paper. "Here's the address. You can come with the woman at 9 o'clock tomorrow," he said. Mr. Bumble looked at the paper. It had no name. "What name should I ask for?" he asked. "Monks," was the reply. The next evening was humid and cloudy. Mr. and Mrs. Bumble walked toward a shabby, decaying house that stood up on the swamp near the river. Mr. and Mrs. Bumble wore dark cloaks so that they could hide themselves in the dark night. "Hello," called Monks as he descended from the stairs of the second floor. Mr. and Mrs. Bumble climbed a ladder and went into a small room upstairs. Monks wanted to start talking about business right away. "What did the old nurse say before she died?" he asked. "Before I tell you, I will take 5 pounds of gold," said Mr. Bumble. Monks paused for an instant and then handed her the money. Mrs. Bumble took it and started relating the story. "Old Sally and I were alone when she was dying. She spoke of a young woman who had given birth to a boy who was called Oliver Twist. When the young woman died, Sally robbed her. It was a piece of gold jewelry." "What did you do with it? Did she sell it?" Monks asked impatiently. "She died before she could mention this, but I found a pawnbroker's ticket in her hand when she died. I took the ticket and I paid the interest plus the loan and recovered the gold from the pawnbroker," said Mrs. Bumble. Monks was highly excited by now. "Where is the gold?" he asked. "Just here," said Mrs. Bumble, showing a wedding ring and a little locket in which there were 2 locks of hair. The locket had the name Agnes carved on it. Monks was satisfied, and suddenly he stood up and opened a trapdoor in the wooden floor, and he showed the Bumbles that there was a swift flowing river before them. Monks put the jewelry and a heavy rock in the handkerchief and tied it shut. And then he threw the bundle into the river and he closed the trapdoor. He then told the Bumbles, "Just remember, the secret of my throwing the jewelry into the river should not be told to anyone. It should strictly remain between the 3 of us, or your lives will be in danger. Now go at once." Mr. and Mrs. Bumble were only too happy to leave him. That is the end of chapter 13.